Hey, I'm Chris Eischen, and this is the Modern Dad Council. Joining me today is Jay Forty of the Greatness Zone and Eric Lehman of the Game Changer Movement. The Modern Dad Council meets to discuss important issues around parenting, relationships, and everything else in the world around being a modern dad. So today we're discussing vision and what it means to have vision and what it is that we envision in our lives, like the relationships with our kids and the home that we live in, the lifestyle that we lead, and everything else. So I'm going to kind of open it up to the guys and let them kind of start off with what maybe their vision is and how they talk to their kids or anything. Anybody got anything they want to start off with without trying to lead? That's like,
well, I thought you're going to.
So we're going to talk about vision, but from this perspective. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. You're right. I did have a quote that I was going to read, and so I'll start with that. I expect to pass through this world but once. Any good, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness that I can show to my fellow creature, let me do that now. Let me not defer or neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. And that's Stephen Roulette. And I just thought that kind of spoke to my vision of how I want to live. You know, just kind of, I look at, we're only here once and on this planet that we know of at least, and so it's like, let's make the best of it and create a world that we all really want to live in. So that's what that quote really spoke to me and why I wanted to share it on today's episode. So anybody have any thoughts to that?
Oh, we both always have thoughts. Well, so my thinking is, you know, how do we want to encourage our kids to look at the world from an opportunity standpoint? You know, that this is a big place to show up and be authentic and do something big. You know, my favorite quote around this is one that we use in entrepreneurship, and it's by Buckminster Fuller. He actually asks the question. He says, "What is it on the planet that needs doing that I know something about that probably won't happen unless I take responsibility for it?" So from a vision standpoint, since I'm a bit more of a doer, and I think Eric and I will share differences of opinions in the doing and being, but I seem to pull up pretty big in the doing camp, that, you know, how am I watching the world and how do I model for my kids my vision that you should show up to understand what it is that you could and should do here to make it a better place for all of us. And if we could do that, it isn't by telling them to be something special, it's by walking with them and guiding them to figure out what it is that they do best, and then help them try and find the places in today's world to do that. And I think that from a vision is what I know we were trying to do with our kids is, don't let me tell you who to be, let me help you discover what that is so you can find in today's world where it is that you could be that, and then be that in a big way. Mr. Eric?
That sounds awesome. Yeah, I mean, and I feel like, you know, one of the first conversations that I remember having with you specifically, Jay, is you know, after I watched this this YouTube of Deepak Chopra, and it was just talking about the way of the warrior, and just this idea that most of the world operates with this have, do, think, be order of operations, and Deepak was talking about the way of the warrior is be, think, do, have, and it just turns everything on its head. And I realized that I've been living in this energy well before, you know, hearing Deepak, and it's just amazing how much, I don't know what the right word is, but interference or like noise comes in from the outside world before we know the right questions to help guide our kids through. And so I feel like the idea of a revision, of what it means to be a dad is in order here. What it means to be a child is in order here, and I guess the other belief that I'm living more fully into now than ever before is that our kids are born with different hardware and software pre-installed than we were born with. So I feel like so many of the tables are turning, and so it's almost like best to ask them, and to just know that we are here as stewards of the next generation. And our best parenting is when we can get out of our own way and get out of their own exploration, even though I think our genetics can help, kind of pave this delicate balance. And so, I mean, I don't have really strong opinions other than how do I get all the other voices out of my head when I'm engaged in present parenting, and are there any emergencies, and is there enough time to pause and get to that stillness and to make sure that the voice that shows up is the authentic one that is coming from, like a place of this time, this moment, rather than the programming that I experienced as a kid. I was an artist. I loved drawing, and I think one of the first things I heard was, "You'll never make enough money doing that." Choose something, whatever. And so the next thing I wanted to be was a stockbroker. So yeah, I mean, and like,
wow, that's quite extreme.
Yeah. So.
Well,
I mean, yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just babbling.
I think a lot of what comes out of that is, in fact, Eric, you had a great way of saying it. I think to be a present parent, that if we're to help our kids figure out what their own vision for themselves is that we have first committed to doing that work for ourselves. And Dr. Shefali Sabari's great book, The Conscious Parent, she talks about that. I mean, you have to do that inner work that you have to do is so that you know about you well enough to know how you show up. And that then lets you tap into all of the things that you come hardwired with, if you want to say it that your software, that you can tap into the greatness of it and understand how to navigate around the pieces that don't work so well. And then what we create for our kids is the opportunity for them to be in a similar place, learning to discover what it is they came packaged with. And the one line that I like around this, John Kabat-Zinn says this in a lot of his mindfulness coursework. He says that we each that there's always more right with us than wrong with us, no matter what we think is wrong with us. And I like that for a kid's standpoint, because we can totally, based on the stories and the scripts and the default settings that we have, spend all of our time looking at what's not quite right with us. Because the world does a very good, when we talk about vision, of telling us that we should look like this, we should drive this, we should live here, we should go to this school, we should be this, we should believe this. And the shoulds then become part of the way our programming then guides us. But if we could stop for a minute and be a present parent, present to the moment, present to our own awareness, we would see that all of that programming we got, we could then say, of it, what's true for me? And that takes a huge amount of courage. And it takes a huge amount of effort. And the world has done a very good job of making sure that we stay so busy that there is very little time and very little energy left for something like this. But I'll throw one final comment in here, and then I'll pass it back to you guys. It seems to be that, the reason why we have, to me this seems like a truth, but I don't have any statistical evidence or study to prove it. It seems like that life sends us the really big pain in the butt stuff when we are really off our mark. And it's to grab us by the shirt collar and shake us so that we could show up to the moment and be aware that we're wandering away from where we should be. It might be an illness, a bankruptcy, a lost job, a divorce, a bad relationship, a kid problem, coming out. It could be any of those. And our first glimpse is to look at them and say, wow, what a burden that is, only to realize that it was one of the big change points in life, because it finally got our attention, slowed us down, made us stop and look and say, if I keep on this pace, it's not going to be all right. Yeah. And for us to do that creates, maybe we just need to be humbled enough in order to do it, but it creates for us the awareness of what it's like so that we can then help our kids see that same picture. So they don't have to go through this big life trauma to know that to make big life choices well, they should show up and be who they are. You know, why do you have to go through a really difficult period? Because everybody you know does. You shouldn't have to if you're wise enough to see its only intention seems to be to give you one of these knock in the heads to say, pay attention, you know, something's not right here. The reason why you're struggling is it's not right. What do you want to do about it? And I find most people at that point get more upset with the world rather than see the blessing that they just got. And that takes, you know, a lot of awareness in order to see the blessing in the trauma. Mm-hmm. How's that for a really tangential point?
Yeah, I like it. It just brings me back to that word practice. Yeah. You know, it's like it's teaching our kids that life is practice. You know, and it starts with being aware. And I love how you talk about that, Jay, and awareness, and just oftentimes we get caught up. Life kind of goes by in a blur. Eric was talking about that too. You just get sucked in, yep. And your vision or the direction you want to see your life is going this way, and for some reason you're just caught in this blur, heading in the wrong direction, and it's going, oh crap, things are not happening the way they need to be happening to complete my vision. So now that I'm aware of it, what are some things that I can implement today to start making those adjustments? And that's that practice. It's just constantly practicing, stopping for a moment, being aware. I mean, there's just so many different levels to it as well, right? So it's like being aware on a daily basis, but sometimes even though you're aware of the present moment, days kind of turn into weeks, turn into months, and so there's like another level of awareness that tends to kind of slip away. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I feel like there's you know, another image that kind of is floating around in my heart right now, which is kind of the beginning of the movie The Shift with Wayne Dyer, where he talks about how as we enter the afternoon of our lives, it resembles nothing of what the morning looked like. And I feel very much that that's where I am. And, you know, the morning of my parenting was so very different than the afternoon is turning out to be. And I mean, the morning was, you know, I want my kids to be mini me's and resemble, you know, my faith and my heritage and my values, and now I'm like, I don't even know what I am. Like, why would I want them to be like something I'm questioning? You know, so I was hell bent on getting all three of my kids, you know, bar bat mitzvahed, and now, you know, that's just not even a conversation. We talked about going to temple the other day, and it was more about what desserts are there, you know, for my 10-year-old than what we might learn, you know, about faith. And it was just a really funny conversation that I had no charge around. But, you know, if I had that conversation 6 years ago in the morning of my parenting, holy cow, like, that would have been so hurtful to hear. You know, you're looking at temple as just a place for a really good dessert, you know. Sacrilege, you know.
Well, maybe what you bring up is maybe this is the modernness of the Modern Dad Council, you know, and it isn't that we're always just talking about awareness, though I think it can't help but help us. But I think what's modern about us is that we understand that we shift as parents in the way that we do things because we become, aware ourselves as beings. Like you said, I mean, the reason why it was the morning of your parenting is because you were different.
Mm-hmm.
And so for our ability to see how we change and to expect that we do and to applaud the fact that we do, I think helps us be a little wiser, so long as we're intentional about our change. We can still change because the world is noisy and pushy and drives us into a period of greed or, all I want to do is work because I really want the extra, the boat or the other car or the vacation house, and I lose track of my family in it. We still could change that way. And the awareness is, and Chris, right back to your point about today's, show, what is the focus or the direction or the, what is it that we believe about where we are and who we are that will allow us to be guided? To me, it's like a mission statement, I guess. The reason for a mission statement in the workplace, or a belief statement or a value statement, whatever they're called now, is so that anybody in the organization knows what's true. What are we doing here, and why do we do it? That's what those are for. They're guideposts. So in the noise and the muck of the world, some path is lit up. So you know, go here, or don't go here. And the lack of knowing that, creates a huge problem for our kids. But think of the problem it creates for us. If we don't know where we're going, and we have people in tow, now we're all wandering, like Survivor Island. We're someplace we don't mean to be. And so to me, that's what I like most about the name of this, as a Modern Dad Council. How do we have to change to be modern, to be here today in today's world for all that it's got going on, its pluses and its minuses? What do we need to rethink about or rethink? And I don't know that we ever have the answer, but we do a really good job of asking a lot of questions. Because I think everybody has to find their own answer. So to me, one truth for me is be aware. And in the awareness, you will find some things that are right for you that are not right for me. But cool, then you should do that. So if there's some structure behind it, like have a value statement, have a belief statement for your family. What is it? I know Larry Hagner talks about a dad mission statement in his book, The Dad's Edge. You should, what is it you commit to doing here? Because then you can hold all of your actions up against it on whether you achieved it. And so you can change over time. You should change over time. But what place do you take a stand for what it is that will happen? And could a modern dad be one that does something like that? Because I know my dad didn't. And I know when I love your analogy, when I was the morning of my parenting, I never did that. My kids think I'm weird anyway. I can't imagine what they would have thought if I made them have a mission statement, a family mission statement. But now I so see the value of it in a world that is constantly telling them who to be and what to think. You should have your commitment as a family on who you are and what you think, rather than let the world tell you.
Yep. I love that in the life possibilities you have that branding statement.
Yeah.
Like of who you are, and that's kind of a cool little thing you can go to on the readyforlife.me site is the 3 About Me. That's Jay's site. That can really help you, give you some insight there as well for if you're kind of struggling and looking for a little insight on yourself, right?
Yeah, let me add one more thing to that. There's a free talent assessment called 3 About Me that you should know your 3 big words as a start in your work on your self-discovery about what it is. So you get a little assessment back that gives you your 3 words and then several other supporting words, so you have practical language on the way that you kind of see the world. And you can find that for free on the ready4life.me. So ready4life.me. But it's for you, it's for your kids, it's for everybody. So you should know what you're great at and what you're interested in and what your strengths are. You should know it. And if you don't, here's a way to start it.
Yeah, I just bring that up because that's where I really struggled for a long time. Is like, I don't know. I kept being what I thought my mom wanted me to be or what my dad wanted me to be. And totally lost track of who I wanted to be, you know, until I went through my second divorce, and it was like, nowhere am I in any aspect of my life doing anything for me. I'm doing all these things because that's what I think people expect me to do.
Yep.
And it's like, holy crap, once you can, you know, really understand that, then it's like, well, what do I want to create out of my life? And that's when you really start to step into this idea of vision, you know, creating a vision for yourself and for your life and for your family, at least for me, you know, and I'm not trying to speak for everybody, but was my experience. I'm 35 and just now figuring this out.
I beat you. I'm in my 50s and I'm just getting to it. So
yeah,
you get to it when you get to it.
You're the blessed one, you know, like.
Yeah. At least we're doing it, right?
And on the flip side, you know, I just also feel like, you know, when you hit those moments, and I still remember as if it were yesterday, I was at a Brendan Burchard seminar, and he asked this question of like, where are you represented? Like, how are you represented in your house, you know, and like, how are you represented in your workplace? And, you know, I mean, I was a pharmaceutical rep, and I was, you know, and then I looked inside my house, and like there weren't many things that were my tastes, you know, screaming, "This is Eric's expression," and so it was like this aha moment, like, where is my vision? Like, what, you know, if you don't have your own vision, you will live into somebody else's vision for you, and I feel like that's what's so powerful about this topic, is that, and maybe the vision is just to be present and just to, you know, we are the family that breathes before reacting, you know, and that's who we get to be, or how we get to be. It doesn't need to be like we are a six-figure earning family, you know, because I felt like when I was that was the emptiest time of the expression of who Eric really was, and I'm fine if I turn into a 7 or 8 figure Eric, but you know, not from a place of anybody else's guidance. I mean, not guidance, but I mean
Requirements.
You know, requirements, yeah. So I don't know, but I mean, I think the other part of it all is just acceptance. You know, I mean, like to love our kids with whatever, you know, their vision is, and to not kind of infuse any of our programming, you know, and to understand that they are on a different journey than we are, you know, and I think that's the biggest part, I think, you know, morning to afternoon, that I'm gaining more awareness around, is that like I just need to get out of my own way and their own way, and that's how I know I'm a good parent or a better parent.
I think the word you had, Eric, before, steward, is maybe the migration from morning to evening. When there are babies, you know, they're ours. You know, it's my baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know any parent who says, "Oh, this kid's just on loan to me to help them figure out their way in life." I just, you know, when you leave the hospital, you are not thinking, "I got a loaner here."
Mm-hmm.
You know, you would think, this is mine. I created it. It's mine. But I think a more mature view is, this kid is truly trusted to me to be their guide until they are able to walk on their own, and not physically walk, but, you know, walk in life on their own. And what is it that we do to prepare them? You know, and you look back at some of these indigenous cultures, and their approach to parenting was very different. It was, how do I help you grow into manhood or to womanhood so that you can then be the best person that you are meant to be, whatever that is? Instead of, how will you make me proud if you go to Harvard? You know, and how will I be disappointed if you go to a community college? And I hear a lot of parents say that. And I'm flabbergasted by the impact on the kid of being a disappointment to a parent because they would like a road different than the parent's road. And, you know, to have a strained relationship your entire time with your parent because you're busy living the parent's view of your life, I know doesn't win me a lot of kudos with certain families. I think I had mentioned this before. I had to speak to a pretty affluent private school here in Fort Lauderdale, and we spent a couple of sessions working with the kids on the life possibilities process. How do you figure out what road's for you? How do you start the process of thinking about it? We don't know your answer, but we can guide you in a way of thinking about it. And then we went to the parents and said, look, if we've made this change or this thinking process with your kids, we want to tell you so that you know how to support them as they start to investigate what else might be for them. And I had a number of very irate parents saying to me, who are you to tell me how and what my kid is to be? And I reminded them I wasn't. But I really encouraged them to ask their kid who they thought they should be instead of telling them who their kids should be. And we had a couple of people storm out. They had their kids' lives already all programmed. Well, I don't know that they checked with their kids at all in that. And who's going to live this on a daily basis? So maybe the vision is that you get to show up authentic, happy, and successful in your definition. You're entirely accountable for it. You do not get to hang out at home. You've got to, launch. But it has to be something that you wake up feeling thrilled with life instead of saddled with life. That, to me, is a really progressive kind of a California hippie, maybe kind of parent mindset. But imagine what a kid who had guidance in order to figure out what that might be. They don't throw you to the wolves and say, go figure it out. It says, look, let's figure it out, and let's walk with each other for a little bit as we figure it out, so that when it's time for you to go, whenever that is, that your first step is on solid ground someplace. And then you'll figure it out on your own from there. But I got to get you to a place that doesn't look like our house, because you really do need to move out. And maybe that's just a story that I'm playing in my head. But your decisions need to be intentional, and they need to be about you and not about me and not about the rest of the world. And it doesn't mean I'm being selfish. It means I think I'm actually being selfless by doing that, because the me that I bring to that world is now the best me. Lots of someones will benefit from that me instead of the one that's all twisted, drugged out, or drinking, because everything about life is really hard to be in. And I hear it over and over again, life sucks and then you die. Really? That's quite a vision. What if life were amazing every day? I mean, why couldn't we send that out? Well, because we've all these stories and this default stuff going on in our head that says life is tough and tough people make it through life and you're not supposed to be that happy. I was married to one who thought life was about a struggle. In fact, we used to kid all the time. Her favorite line was, how will you know I'm a martyr if you don't see me suffering? Why would you want to be a martyr? Isn't there another way to play this? What other vision could you offer that life is exciting? And couldn't we raise the next generation thinking that life could be just amazing?
Well, I mean, even Einstein talks about, one of the biggest questions we get to ask ourselves is, like, if whether or not like everything is a miracle or nothing's a miracle, and if you look at everything as a miracle, even these life events that you were referencing earlier are blessings and are lessons and are welcome rather than why me? So I feel like maybe a different word for vision is mantra. In kind of how I get to look at parenting, and so my new amazing partner asked me, like, do I have a mantra? And when it was interesting because one magically appeared, but I didn't think that I had a practice of saying it. It's just that I wake up in the morning knowing that everything happens for me, not to me, and that I know is my deep mantra, and it brings the day forth with awe, and wonder rather than what's going to happen to me today, So, and kind of offers sort of a co-creation, and I think that's the other opportunity for us as modern dads, whatever that means, is to to tell our kids or let our kids know that we are indeed co-creators of everything that comes our way. And so, I mean, I'm excited to evolve my parenting into this question that says, wow, this thing just happened. How did you attract it? And how do we teach our kids to take full ownership of all of it? I mean, I experienced a really quote-unquote traumatic event when I was 17, where I was living in a homeless shelter. And how did I attract that rather than how did that happen to me, Totally different energy around that question. So
I would love to, Eric, I have to think a little bit on how to use that. I love that, What did you, say it again, it was, how did you attract that? Is that what you said? Yeah, I like that. Instead of, I'm a victim here, instead I'm an owner here, and for some reason I chose that, or I had an influence of that. What was it, so that if it were good, I could keep it going. If it's not so good, what did I learn so I could move on? But that's all about ownership. And, so to me, if I were piecing information that belonged in a vision, one would be authenticity, another one would be, and I guess I'm right down to what I think are the A's of leadership, right, Chris, and the Life Leader Workbook.
Absolutely.
Awareness. So authenticity is awareness, accountability, and adaptability. That those would be part of the vision I would want for me and for my family, that I'm authentic because I'm really aware, I'm entirely accountable for all of the decisions that I make in my life, and I roll with the punches in a life that changes it up on a daily basis to get me to see how much is possible instead of bored with the same old, same old. And that is not a long time perspective of mine. It's taken a long time to come in, and that we get maturity sometimes if we do our hard work to tune in. And now that I see it, and my challenge was, how do we put it into language so we can comfortably tell other people, not that they have to do it, but could we start in a place and poke in these areas? Again, as process, could you think in these areas, and then what you get out of it is yours. The process doesn't matter. It's who you tune into being as you go through this. One of the last things that we ask at the Youth Leadership Program is, who are you becoming? Not who did you become, but who are you becoming? And the process of asking these questions and giving you the behaviors and the values of what people who are life leaders do, how are you changed? What has opened up for you? What has changed? And it's not meant to sound new agey, but it is totally about being present and tuned into who you were and who you are. And could you see the difference? Because you were doing some things on purpose. Can you keep doing them? And I think that's why, Eric, I just love that. I mean, if we threw to our kids, not what happened to you today, but what were the choices you made today, that the things that that you brought into being came into being, and what does it tell you about what to do next? I mean, do more of the same, or wow, big lesson, not doing that again. But great, now you get to be an authentic, accountable player in the game of life.
And one thing that kind of spoke to me as you were talking there, Jay, was like, I felt like as I was going through this kind of personal growth, self-discovery, and starting to, okay, I want to be, this is the person that I envision myself to become, right? And so I'm going to start those daily practices to be that person. And then I find myself feeling inauthentic, so I was feeling like I was being fake, because it's like, well, this really isn't how I feel. I feel all these other negative feelings. So, but because I'm trying to be this person that I envision, a part of me felt like I was being inauthentic. But in fact, that was the internal struggle I was going through in making that long-term change in my life. Does that make sense? Like, I had to start I had to fake it to make it kind of a thing. Like,
Yep.
I want to start thinking positive and being positive, so I'm just going to keep throwing that, those positive things out there, and it's going to be forced at times because I'm making that a change in myself. So it's like, I guess I wanted to speak to that because I feel like when people are kind of going through this change in their life, like for me, it was my divorce that it was that catalyst that created this need in me to change things about my life and about myself, right? And it was like going through that change was a real struggle because part of me was feeling inauthentic, that like, I'm not listening to my death metal music anymore, and that was something I really liked. So I'm being fake because I like that music, but really I don't listen to that music anymore because creates all this negativity, and that's the thing. Those are the things that I need in order to be the person that I envision myself to be. Does that make sense?
Makes
Like
tons.
that whole kind of struggle and everything. And I really wanted to kind of share that experience because I think oftentimes we forget that struggle really exists as we're going through those changes in ourselves.
I think that the thing to remember, Chris, and I love that you brought it up, is that our behaviors are like really deep ruts. And it takes a lot to fill the ruts in and come up with a new path. I'm always reminded of winter in New England, right? And Eric, you get this, right? Where, in fact, Chris, you get winter too. So, it's been snowy out there, and the first couple of cars drive through it, and then it freezes. And now you can't help but follow those trails, those ruts. And the brain is like that. Repetitive behaviors created some really deep neural ruts. For us to change, we have to do a lot of intentional things to shift that rut behavior into new behavior and create new ruts. And it isn't easy because the brain loves what it loves. It defaults back to the ruts. It's pulling the car back into the ice ruts. And it takes real effort to move it out. But that's what the fake it till you make it is. I gotta build some new practices to start digging some new ruts, so that I can at least shift it, and over time it will feel easy and feel comfortable.
I mean, that also had me just conjure up an image of what are the generational ruts that we are living into, and just we are living in a time where three or four generations of the same lineage are alive at the same time, and that's almost like a blessing and a curse,
Right.
and so it would be really easy to do something different than 2 or 3 generations ago if they weren't still alive saying, why are you doing it this way, so I was thinking about those ruts, and then I was also thinking about this book that I read, and I don't remember which book it was, but it referenced the winemaking process and the wine aging process, and it talked about how there's sort of a dumb phase or whatever it is in the aging of wine, where if you try to open a barrel of wine too early, the most amazing barrel of wine that is going to be this perfect vintage if you wait 10 years, but if you only wait 5, it's going to taste awful. And I feel like that's the other sort of rut that we because family is so present and so much around, I in a way, like I'm looking at my life in lots of different contrasts, because I don't have too much of my biological and or adopted family around in influential circles right now. So I'm kind of on, find out what my own values are, time and space. And then I see other people who are, living, in multi-generational households, and what is that like, so it's just, when we're in our dumb phase, in our kids' witness, and I think that's the interesting challenge as a modern dad is like, I admit there are some things that are not fully baked yet about, the process I'm going through, and there's still parenting to be done in those moments, while I'm still in my dumb phase. I just think that's a really, it's a way to be gentle with ourselves. Like, just say, hey kids, I'm in my dumb phase, and to let them know that you're still a work in progress is, I think it's one of the best things that we can do as a parent is, be wrong or be humble, and know that we don't have definitive answers, and that we're ready and willing to change our mind, and our hearts. So, and I don't know if that was an option generations ago.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And as we had these ethnic families too, I mean, think of all of the cultural traditions that come along that you don't even know, you don't know you don't know. You don't know the reason why you do what you do, how you say it, way that you celebrate, is because you didn't stop to think about it. It's what you've always done. It's been busy playing out. And now that or when the moment comes where you say, oh, I wonder if I want my kids to go and be, bat mitzvahs. What is it? Bar
bat mitzvah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So for the Italian Catholic kid, the confirmation or the first communion or going to church at all, there were no discussions around these things, just what you did, and you felt insanely guilty if you didn't do it, even though you're 30, and even though this is your life. And those kinds of things are there about everything. What you eat, when you eat it, what you would consider doing for work, where you might live, all of this stuff just gets programmed into us. And the awareness of it can drive you a little bit nuts, because now you're seeing, oh my God, I'm like not even in my own life here. Everything that's going on sounds like my grandmother or my 6th grade teacher or my parents or my siblings, when what would it sound like if it were me? And how might I find my own voice in that? So Chris, bring it right back to what you talked about at the beginning. I think the vision for us is a place for us to have our own voice. That it must be our own voice in it. And the hard part about creating that is we don't even know what our voice sounds like because of the noise of everybody else around us, from traditions or ethnicity or locations or whatever it is. That there's just a lot of things we think are true when none of them have to be true. None of them have to be true. And that's a big mind blow for a lot of people, that I can't possibly challenge that because, since Adam and Eve, we've been doing that. Okay, well, maybe you should probably change that now, because the world was a little different then than it is now. And or at least be open to it. And I'm not even saying change it, but could you look at it to say, does it still serve me and bring me to my greatest self? Yes, keep doing it. No? Hey, how about a change? And just in line with the Catholic, I was the only one of 6 kids that still went to church when we were out on our own, but I went to an Episcopal church. And I was the kid that got an earful from my dad, who was upset with me about abandoning our faith. And we had a great learning experience in the whole thing. My mother was brilliant. She said, who are you to tell him where or what to believe? The fact that he still goes to church, and he's the only one of 6 kids still doing it, why are you picking on this kid? And it was just, we had traditions. The tradition is you have to do this. And it was more dangerous for him to see that I was going to a different church than the other kids were not going to church. And it was just a funny thing playing in his head. And it can then affect my life until I was bold enough to say, but that doesn't bring me to any place better. I need to go to a place where I am better. And so this is for me. And then, I don't know that he loved that answer, but but I have long since taken the baton, and it is my life I'm running with. So I love that you have input, but thank you. I'll take it under wise advisement and tell you whether I'll do it or not. But that's what happens when you move out. And so I think to be able to create in our kids the permission to create and to have their own vision by watching us create our vision, I think is really healthy for them.
And I just keep going to this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I kind of getting off track on with what my thought was. So if you want to
Well, I mean,
stay in alignment. Go ahead.
yeah, I just got two triggered things. One is, when I was first, in courtship with my ex-wife, I remember talking about her with my bubby, my grandma, and I was telling her about this new relationship in my life, and she's like, "What's her name?" And I'm like, "It's Christy," and like she paused, and she's like, "She's not Jewish, is she?" And so like I just remember, I mean, she learned to love her anyway,
Yeah.
but like that was the programming. And then on the flip side, when I became a father and the kids would do overnights from Saturday into Sunday at Christy's parents' house, there was no conversation about it. It was just they were going to church. Like no one checked in with me, and like that was the biggest affront to my value system. Like I was invisible. Like no one thought to ask. On the flip side, I mean, like this was like the eureka moment of this conversation. Is like nobody asked for 20 generations. Like why am I supposed to be the special one where all of a sudden, people ask. And it was so interesting because just what it means to like join different cultures and perspectives. Once they saw me eating bacon, they're like, Jews don't eat bacon, therefore you must not be a good Jew. Therefore, you don't count, and when church is happening, church is happening. So, like it was just a very interesting progression. And I mean, the amount of Jews I know who love their bacon. Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I could be a great Jew if it weren't for bacon.
It's delicious.
So, yeah.
That's one of the world's best foods. Yeah, it's a big problem. But I think that this kind of conversation just brings up all of these programmed events in our heads until we, for some reason, had the nerve or the courage to say, I wonder why I still do that. It's crazy. Remember in our coaching, we always talk about this. How curious, that great line, when you bump into something, you just say, how curious that that's still bothering me, or how curious that I do that. I don't even know why I do that. And so maybe the encouragement as a modern dad is that we get good at questioning the things that we do to ensure that they are things that we mean to do instead of have always done. And in that, I think
that saying.
Really,
I like your saying, looking at things and asking how that serves you. How does this serve you?
Not from a selfish standpoint, too, because that can sound really selfish. It's how does it help me be the best me? And if I go to, for instance, to a church that doesn't activate a spiritual awakening in me, why am I here? I need to be in a place where that would happen. And if I see the world differently and I'm far more affected by a walk in the woods than going to church, then why is it that I don't get to have that? Because some tradition said this is what we do. Well, this is what we did. Now, what was its goal? Well, the goal was to connect you to a higher sense of self. Okay, so what will do that for you now? And you may have 3 kids with 3 different senses of 3 different ways of accessing the best sense of self. And how could we be accommodating as parents to let them grow into who they need to grow into and to deliver to the world the best version of who they are instead of who I need them to be? I know that's really hard. But that's why we call it the modern dad council instead of the historic dad council.
Well, that kind of brings up what I was thinking about. I was just thinking of how the discovery of America was kind of this allowed for what you guys are talking about, like this choice. Like, holy crap, we don't have to stay here and listen to what we've always been told. That we have an opportunity to like go over there and do whatever we want. And that was like the first time that really in history kind of happened, at least that we know of. And so the discovery of America was that that big eye opener for everybody else to kind of look at themselves. So just kind of cool when you think about it. What we struggle with every day, and then when we look at what society has created as a whole. It's kind of really neat. Does anybody have any other comments to wrap up? Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you for.
Just quickly, I feel like we started with the topic of vision, and I feel like the word that showed up for me is revision. And I feel like as we enter the afternoon of our fatherhood, it is a time of great revision, and I'm like charged and excited about it. So I just wanted to thank you for opening this topic and then letting us go into it.
No, thank you guys. Thank you for everything. And this has been the Modern Dad Council. Today we've talked about vision, and I hope it kind of helps you to find areas to apply that into your life. Join us next week.